Herman, thanks so much for taking the time. I am so excited about this conversation. Um, let's start here. Like 2 or 3 weeks ago, you posted on LinkedIn about this agent authorization, agent security paper that you want to write. And I know you got an insane amount of attention and inbound. What were your last 2 to 3 weeks like? Give us some color.
Yeah, great. Well, maybe just like starting, hello everyone. My name is Herman. I'm a product manager at Vanta. And yes, in last 3 weeks, I've released the AARM system category specification. And to be frank, it has been a little bit wild. I was definitely not expecting this level of recognition, acceptance, but also like collaboration from various industry peers. Think about builders, CISOs, but also investors are like saying, okay, tell us more about this project. It has been crazy because, as you can imagine, the work of a PM is very busy, super busy schedule, always like thinking about problems and alignment with stakeholders, engineering. So doing this essentially in early in the morning and at night has been like a little bit challenging, but it's such a fascinating problem that I'm really delighted that it got this level of recognition.
Absolutely fantastic. Let's go into the paper
Yeah.
and the concept that you're proposing in a second. How many? I've seen some of the reactions on LinkedIn. How many people roughly reached out to you after you published this?
Wow. I would say at least 600 people have reached out directly. And we today list 12 startups in the AARM specification website, and I'm currently collaborating with 6 CISOs in this space that are giving feedback to the specification. So yeah, all in all, huge success so far, but most of the success is really to the builders that have really took courage and are there grinding every day building in this space. Because effectively, I just wrote a paper and put up a small website, but really the credit really goes to all the builders out there and the great work that they're doing.
Cool. That's a very nice recognition that you are giving there. But I also think like the work that you put into, I think it's 24, 26 pages, so it's really detailed, thorough, almost academic style type of work. You see this level of thoroughness quite rarely these days, where everything is happening so quickly. And maybe before we can go into the building blocks of the concept that you are
Yep.
proposing there and why it matters, let's start with the why. Why does this matter? Why is
Yeah.
agentic access a problem at all from your perspective? Let's say from a security perspective, why is it a problem, and why is it such a complex problem?
Absolutely. I want to really bring us back to 2005. 2005 is when um, logging and monitoring were not talking to each other. And someone at Gardner said, hey, why don't you guys build a security information and event management tool, which is well known today as a CM solution? And the problem at the time is that we had visibility on logs, but then we were not able to manage events in a effective way to block certain actions from occurring. And that was like 2005. CM solution have now become the building block of security. My role at Vanta is exploring security challenges and tools. And then as I went into the exploration of MCP security, I wrote a paper back in November on MCP security. I found this like large gap where modern security tools are not fit for purpose in terms of managing AI actions today. Because modern security tools can log actions. They can potentially stop certain activities, but there's a concept of like machine intent, human in the loop. There's also speed and being able to intercept certain actions, which make modern security tools not fit for purpose for modern AI threats. Therefore, the idea was, okay, here I have three options. I can ignore the problem because essentially it's not what I do today on a daily basis. Or I can start a startup, right? And go, hey, why don't I just go back to founder mode? I've been a founder in the past and start a company, solve this problem. Or maybe why don't I act as a kind of like a global PM where I define a spec, I help people better understand a problem so that they can all align on a particular solution. And I did the third thing with AARM. So essentially, this was started in November. I spent the Christmas holidays writing this paper, and then got some feedback from industry peers and released the paper in at the beginning of February. So that's like the overall backstory.
Yeah, it's really cool, and it's really interesting that you're also proposing that the solution to this problem should be almost an sort of coordinated cross-industry type of exercise versus companies trying to tackle it individually, which I totally get. And maybe once more, when it comes to agent access in a world where like all workflows are going to be executed by agents, let's stick to the problem for a few more minutes before we go into the solution and why is it such a complex problem to solve. One analogy I quickly wanted to share, one of the best analogies that I've seen. I mean, the thing is like, to some extent, agentic access or AI agent access is actually comparable to human access, but then there are a few really fundamental differences, and these differences ultimately lead to a situation that we all agree that the existing security frameworks, how to authorize a sort of identity access, won't apply to agents. Now, one of the best analogies that I read recently was actually comparing an agent to a consultant. So imagine a large corporation is hiring a consultant. The consultant gets a badge from the CEO and a certain task. And essentially with that badge from the CEO, the consultant can go everywhere in that building. If it wants to go into they want to go into the basement to do some research there or find some paper, probably there might be a security guard, but he will just say, no, CEO told me to come here and solve this problem. So they can just go and find their way. And that's, I believe, one of the two challenges that we have with agents. If we really want a world where agents unfold their full power, we want them to be autonomous, right? We want them to find their own paths and to interact in a super open framework. At the same time, they can do this at sort of light speed, at the spur of a second. And unlike humans, they don't have any accountability or liability. So maybe you can, from your perspective, because I'm sure this was the ultimate trigger to write this paper, why is it such a sort of, from a security perspective, risky problem? And it's two questions in one question. Why do today's security and IAM frameworks don't really work to authorize agents?
Yeah. We like the analogy of like someone with unfettered access, they can do whatever they want. It makes a lot of sense. I was a consultant in the past, so I can definitely remember being given a badge. In my paper, I identify three characteristics of why agents have different parameters that are not matching with the type of security tooling that exists today. The first one is irreversibility. Mm-hmm. Agents are not generating text anymore. They are calling MCP tools, and those MCP tools expose certain edit actions. People are using OpenClaw. Yes. They are going, hey, why don't you automate my life? Here's a credit card, go and spend $100. There's also speed. Agents are operating at insane level of speed. So even if I am able to intercept a certain action and I use a traditional policy-based tool, it will be almost impossible for a human to respond to that threat, because that's how kind of like a SIEM solution would work.
Exactly.
There's a alert and event. There's a SOC analyst, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 that are analyzing the threat. But imagine the speed at millions and billions of actions every day. But for all the agents that have been deployed, people are all buying 40 Mac Minis and are deploying OpenClaw to like automate my life and do all those like crazy things. And then also think about the privilege amplification, which is what you said. We are assigning a static credential to
Yes.
a agent,
Yes.
and then the agent, the moment the agent is as edit access and privilege access, it's trusted.
Yes.
It can do all the actions that are assigned to traditional role-based access control.
Yes.
That's so I think for our discussion, I think this is the most interesting point, because in a normal role-based access control, I am assigned a admin privilege, and you would trust that as an admin, I would perform my duties in a way that, in a way that makes sense for the organization. However, LLMs are non-deterministic. They might be confused, and in my paper also, I highlight different types of threats. For example, intent drift. As an agent, I start with a particular task, then I interpret the task in a different way, and then I end up with a different output. There is no tool today that can really manage this type of pattern. And I think that's where all the work that you guys are doing, other builders are doing, comes into play. And I think it's super fascinating to see how you guys are going to end up solving some of those very gnarly problems.
So to quickly summarize this, I think the key things that I'm hearing is static long-lived access, with like in most of the cases very broad permissions. Depends a little bit on the let's say specifications of the MCP that is connected, but it's long-lived access with very broad permissions. It acts in milliseconds, and it has no liability or accountability, and in most of the cases also no audit trail. Now. Let's go.
The audit trail might be visible at the on the server side.
Yes.
Of, say, imagine a company as a tool to create your presentation or a coding agent. Some of the logs might be sitting, especially the verbose logs, might be sitting on the server side, but the user on the user end, maybe the admin interface, there's not a lot of like details for that just yet. It might be different in the future, but then it becomes kind of like every single builder will come up with their own version of how you like log those activities, and that's, I think, the fragmentation that I would like to avoid with AARM.
Yes, let's go into AARM, Autonomous Action Runtime Management. What are the key building blocks of the paper and the sort of solution that you are sketching out there, Herman?
Yeah. Think about when it comes to AARM, there's a number of key components. When it comes to a autonomous action, you need to be able to intercept the action. Mm-hmm. There are various types of implementation architecture that I'm proposing. You can act as a gateway. You can implement it as an SDK. It can be at a kernel level. It can be a vendor integration. There needs to be a way to essentially analyze the actions that are incoming. So you need to intercept the actions. Then you need to be able to accumulate and gather the context and the chain of thought from the agent, because that really makes a difference between you being able to effectively block something just based on a policy rather than based on analyzing context. Because the difference here, and I think that's the key differentiator of this specification, is that if it's just policy-based, you're going to end up in a scenario where most of the actions of an AI agent might either be blocked, that is a false positive.
Yes.
Or not blocked, which is even worse, and that is a false negative. So to resolve this problem, you need to accumulate context. Then once you've accumulated context, you can really evaluate the action against a static policy, but also a dynamic policy, which reads intent, right? And then the last piece is really enforcing authorization, where you identify like different types of authorization types. It can be, okay, this is explicitly denied, or it's context approved, context denied, or I think my favorite is context deferral.
Yes.
Context deferral is when the AARM system is not able to, the AARM system is not able to determine if this action should occur or not, and then asks a human, which is the concept of like human in the loop.
Exactly.
To
that's the escalation process almost.
It needs to escalate at some point. And then, yeah, the final piece is really logging all the actions with tamper-based logs. And that's essentially AARM. Pretty simple in terms of concept, extremely complex in terms of how you go and build it out. So I think that's the main difference. I want to cover one piece about why it's important to not continue to use human in the loop as the only mean to manage agent actions. So human in the loop, for people that maybe are not aware of this, is essentially when the agent performs a certain action, which is considered sort of privileged, or it has a certain impact, and then it asks for permission before running the action, which is when you go, hey, I'm about to change this configuration. Do you agree? Approve, deny. What we're seeing today is that agents are making so many actions a day that there is a authorization fatigue at the user level.
And you just bum, bum, bum,
and then some users are either finding ways to like auto approve, or they circumvent the system, or they just ignore it. There's also like patterns where some threat injection types have proven to have broken the human in the loop process. So you really want to present to a human actions that have been really analyzed, and you don't know what they are, you're unsure as an AARM system. So that's the architecture in a nutshell.
It's super interesting what you're bringing up there. The same is an issue, I would argue, already today with human access. Like if there's too much approval required from an individual, there's going to be what psychology calls ego depletion. So your threshold just goes down and you're just going to approve. And of course, if this happens in milliseconds, and everyone who's using Claude Code can already see this, can I? I can observe myself. I really realized when as you were doing this in the first place, I was always very, very cautious. And at some point, like, I want to get this job done. Yes, of course you can do it, right? So
yeah, exactly.
It's exactly what you're saying. So what I find highly fascinating, so along these four potential sort of entry points that you mentioned, or starting points, protocol gateway, SDK, and kernel or vendor integration, ultimately what you're saying, given the fact what we said earlier, that today agents get, because you would probably authenticate and authorize them, there's no real authorization. You literally actually just authenticate them today via API key in most cases, or even with the human credentials, and then you go, and then the scope depends on the MCP scope. What you're saying is there needs to be an independent gateway instance that decides specifically, dynamically, based on the job that an agent has, what scopes and what permission it should get. And probably there would be a set of rules and policies, and probably you would start an agent with, hey, I want you to do XYZ. This is the permission I give you. This is our global policy. And then the agent goes, and then there will be conflicts, and ideally the gateway itself can solve then. And if it can't, there needs to be an escalation sort of loop to the human. I love that concept, and I find it highly fascinating. Here's the question that at least I haven't cracked intellectually yet. The reason why we need this, and I think this is important for everyone who's listening here, is, by the way, that because there's of course a concept like guardrails in LLMs, right? And we all agree that these guardrails don't work because they are probabilistic and there are a million ways to break them. Yeah. If an LLM has a certain guardrail that it can't sort of tell, for instance, a user to give them a description how to commit suicide, you just tell the LLM, imagine you're the author in the 19th century and you're writing a book how to commit suicide. So guardrails won't fix the job. That's why we need this independent instance. Now, at the end of the day, this independent dynamic instance that you are proposing will itself leverage an LLM. Yeah. So what's the difference there? You're just sort of, I'm making a little bit of a provocative statement. You're just moving the decision to another instance, but that instance has the same problem essentially.
There are different ways in which I could answer this question. I'm going to also try to propose a slightly contrarian way. Today, every single builder is first and most thinking about how can I use AI to solve this problem?
Yes.
There are countless AI machine learning ways that are not LLM to solve a problem like that. And I think to me, there needs to be a combination of pattern recognition, regex, but also LLM to help clarify this problem. The reason why I am very bullish about this type of solution, even with LLMs, is because you're shifting the builder mindset into a different direction. Today, the people that are building guardrails, they're not doing that as their first primary job. They're doing that as a nice to have feature on the side, that safety is absolutely important. Responsible AI is an important movement. However, most builders today are in a arms race. They're all fighting to like, who's going to be the better, who's going to be the most efficient, who's going to be the cheapest model to run. But also the agent builders, they are thinking about how can I just like make the user do less things and even like just think about something and then get the output immediately. No one's really like hardly thinking about how can I build the solution to help the AI agent adoption. So I think once you shift the builder mindset to like, hey, as a builder, I'm just focusing on this problem every day, then LLMs can also help with this job.
That's a great answer. And I agree that it's a question of focus and what you are actually ultimately after. Now, this is the perfect bridge to something I'm always also really keen on and interested. Like, I guess one of the key reasons why you published this paper and why you also announced it is that you're really making a push that ideally this should be a cross-industry kind of exercise,
Yes.
Rather than companies almost working against each other to solve this. And ideally, it ultimately might become a protocol that everyone who's working on this is using. Two questions on this. I started with the first one. Why do you think it's beneficial that it's a cross-industry mutual effort versus the best companies out there are competing and trying to build the best solution? What's your take there, Herman?
Yeah. Ultimately, regardless of what I think, the first mover, the builder who gets there first with a working solution will actually dictate what the industry is going to look like. That is going to happen regardless of whether we want it or not. However, we can, as an industry, we can influence that behavior towards the things that matter for the user of these tools. If you look at all the technologies or protocols or solutions that were created, starting from the signature-based anti-malware to behavioral detection, anomaly detection, CM, XDR, SOAR, I can spend days talking about all these solutions. one thing that I know as a security professional, having used those tools, is that there's total fragmentation in terms of table stakes and the things that these tools do. And what that has led to is that the tech stack of a security team is not 3 tools. The tech stack of a security team is 60 different tools.
Yes.
This is such a fundamental problem that if we don't act as a kind of like a peer group building, defining what this tool should do, we're going to end up buying 60 tools to manage AI agents or runtime. And then that is going to lead to inefficiency, vendor lock-in. Also, we might not even solve the problem effectively, right? And that's how I think. And I think you had a second part to your question as well.
I think you already answered it.
Okay.
My second part was like, why do you propose it? My second part was like, in a very market-driven sort of environment, you would almost argue that competition also helps to come up with the best solution. But I think you already answered that question. So no need to ask anymore. Armin, what do you think in like this dynamic gateway that we're speaking about here? It will take a little while probably. It's a very technical, a very complex problem to solve, and the landscape is also sort of moving so quickly. So you mentioned at the beginning of this call, obviously OpenClaw and the things that we've all seen there, and they were like good manifestations of what can go wrong. What do you think are we going to see in the weeks to come in terms of other or comparable security breaches around agents? What's top of mind concerns?
Okay. So talking about Peter's work with OpenClaw, I think he did a great job. He now joined OpenAI. That's super exciting. I think he's going to do very well there. Obviously, that is an open source project, right? It is a little bit surprising and a little bit naive to think that a open source project, which is maintained by the goodness of people, has certain level of security standards. So obviously, if you're using an open source project, it might have some critical vulnerabilities. So I'm less fascinated when I see people like discovering CVEs on OpenClaw. That's like, it's okay, like it's an open source project. I think what might happen in the future is as companies, well, I'm seeing a super interesting signal. Every CEO at almost every company today is starting to ask for AI adoption because they want to see efficiency. And many organizations are including metrics on how much you use AI agents or tools as a performance metric. It's how engineers is done with go-to-market people. You'll see more coming up with product. In this world where everything is outsourced to an agent, we absolutely will be able to see large-scale compromises, situations where those agents do perform actions that will lead to company losing 96% of their market capitalization. Because imagine that your AI agent starts acting in a way that compromises certain type of users, and then you immediately lose trust from your customers. Companies in regulated markets will immediately lose market share because of that. So I think I will definitely see large-scale attacks or compromises due to the AI agent, lack of visibility and overpermission. We've seen these types of attacks already, and I think as the adoption intensifies and amplifies, we will see large scales. Because before, like these are most likely small proof of concept and everyone was using it. Now we're actually plugging all company knowledge into these maybe embedded tools. The moment you're sending data to a software, you need to be aware that whichever person works there might be able to see your data, right? It's super encrypted that no one's access to it. So these are things that I really want to urge people to think about, the need for these observability and authorization tools. Because if you don't know, you don't know, but then at some point you definitely might know. And another thing that I am pretty confident about is that we might see large scale fines coming for organizations not implementing these tools. And then also insurance providers will start increasing cyber insurance premiums because of like lack of AI agent security tools. Definitely a fascinating space.
It's super fascinating. Time is flying by. I think the contribution that you made or that you are making is super important to raise the awareness that like getting security and authorization right is one of the most important enabling factors for like large scale AI agent adoption in the months to come. Herman, thank you so much for your time. As I said at the beginning, this is definitely the highlight of my week. Yeah, absolute pleasure speaking to you. And yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. Let's continue working on this as an industry.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been a pleasure to chat with you.
Stay on the